Hello and welcome, my name is Mal, and if you're unfamiliar with me or my channel, I cover a wide range of games, but my favorites tend to be strategy, simulation, and role-playing games. Today, I'm once again covering Master of Orion, the 2016 strategy reboot title from NGD Studios and Wargaming. I'm going to be covering what the devs are referring to as Phase 3 of the early access. Now, there were a lot of changes made in this particular update to the game, which released on 4/22 of 2016, if you're from the future. And I can't possibly cover every single change, but I will try to cover all of the major points. So we will discuss the two new races, their starting traits, and the impact their entry will have on the current gameplay. We'll discuss how to be sneaky scumbags with the newly implemented espionage system, and we'll take a close look at that from the detailed perspective of the Darla Cabal, which I believe is appropriate. I'll briefly discuss the new minor civ feature. We'll take a look at the victory conditions, and specifically the new victory condition, economic, but we'll take a look at all of them because there has been some changes and updates. We'll take a look at the new tech changes, particularly the way weapons get smaller as you get better at your technology and how that might impact shipbuilding. We'll also take a look at the new ship designer, which was not listed as a major update, but it got an overhaul and it looks pretty slick. I will also take a look and discuss some of the gameplay balances. They've implemented a lot of different changes to not only the starting traits, but also how the world's different biomes themselves function, so we will discuss that. And then throughout the video, I'll touch on little features like the fact that there's a new huge galaxy type or the new GNN reports, and I'll try to point out general improvements as well. All right, let's get started, shall we? Let's dig into the massive update with the two new races, and first up are the Thesilicates. Now, unlike the previous iterations of this race, it seems that in this version of Master of Orion, the Thesilicates can actually interact with other races. For longtime players like myself, and I believe others, this is going to be a welcome change. So let's hear a little bit about their history, and then we'll take a look at their traits in detail.
Alone in their unique composition, the Thesilicoid are an ancient race of silicon-based life forms from the planet Cressida. Their impressively long lifespans and abysmally low birth rates have resulted in a civilization of relatively few individuals with lots of experience. The oldest among them is known as the Keystone, ruler of the Thesilicoid and speaker for the Crag. As outcasts among other alien races, they see other races as fleeting, temporary blurs that leave nothing behind but trouble for the Crag.
Okay, so we'll get into the details here on the Thesilicoid in just a second, but I wanted you to note some changes that have come about with regards to Uber planet upgrades. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Master of Orion, what an Uber planet upgrade is, like in the case of the Thesilicoids here, if they come across, say, a volcanic planet, they can improve that to a Uber planet, as it's referred to, and then it would become an Inferno type, which gives them additional advantages with how pollution's handled and how production produces on that planet and so forth. Now, note that in Early Access Phase 3, that all races that have the ability to do an Uber planet upgrade will start with that as their homeworld. I'm not exactly sure what the impact is going to be from a balance perspective, but that leads me into my next little bit about Uber planets. According to the dev notes, they did a balance pass on the Uber planets, so they're not going to be quite as good or as strong as they were previously. So while still advantageous, not overwhelmingly so. That's probably a good change. Because I have to tell you, when I was playing the Clacon, and I started changing everything into cavernous worlds, which is their Uber planet upgrade, I mean, it just snowballed fast, just unbelievably powerful. So I'm glad that they're still continuing to make balance pass changes, and I hope they continue to do so. All right, so let's get into their actual traits. They receive a negative 25% research from population, which is a rather stiff penalty early on, but it can be overcome, and it's not maybe as bad as maybe people seem to be on sort of first impression. First off, it's a penalty to the base population research generation and not additional research per population. Well, what the hell does that mean, Mal? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you get the advanced research tech, which gives you a +1 per population to your research. As I understand it, the base population research would receive the -25, but that additional +1 that you unlock from the tech would remain unchanged. So I would think that one of the ways that you could overcome sort of the research gap beyond expanding quickly is really focus on additional research facilities, maybe take moon labs instead of orbital shipyards. And you look at things like asteroid research structures and things like that, fixed research points that your empire can benefit from and not maybe being as reliant on population research. Though -25% is a chunk, it's not that harsh, especially considering their primary advantage. Now, this I'm not sure if is going to be balanced or not, and the devs have actually already made a community posting about it, saying they're going to be keeping a close eye on it. So their primary advantage is that their population requires no food and it doesn't generate any, regardless of the biome that they're present in. This has the potential to be really, really unbalanced, but I think it's interesting. The no food requirement, I would have rather seen the silicoids have the trait where they had previously, which was something called tolerant, which allowed you to colonize any world and it would be native to your population. With the Uber planet system, I think it was probably too difficult to try and balance that out. Thus, they're trying the no food piece. And again, the devs have admitted themselves that they're not sure how this is going to balance out. So they're going to keep a close look on it. I'm going to be playing the silicoids, of course. So we'll get a good chance to kind of see in the next phase how this plays out, if it's too overwhelming or whatnot. But I look forward to playing my rock-based buddies, the silicoids. And let's take a look at the next one, shall we? And here we have the second new race in Early Access Phase 3, the Darla Cabal. Now, I've already played around with this race, and I have to say that I really like the look and style of them, but I'm not 100% sold on their traits. Now, once Espionage gets 100% sorted out, then they have the potential to be very strong, but there are some limiting factors, and I will talk about that when we get into the espionage section of this video. But let's hear a little bit about their story, and then we'll take a look at their traits in better detail.
Elusive and paranoid, the Darlak of Nazin both crave and despise identity. Their shape-shifting nature puts them at odds with themselves as often as with other races, since they neither trust nor can be trusted. They constantly scheme in the shadows, while their agents hide in plain sight, gathering information to serve the purposes of the Cabal. Scavengers by nature, they pull together elements from different sources into mismatched but effective patterns. The Darlak eschew open conflict and would rather sap their enemy's strength or place them on a collision course with another race before moving in for the final blow.
Alright, so let's be clear. First off, the Darlaks are supposed to be played a certain way, as sort of the sneaky scumbags that lie in wait until they have a clear advantage. Think of them as the more kind of scavengy, low-tech looking versions of, say, the Romulans from Star Trek, right? They're just gonna kind of hang out, and they're gonna be hiding behind their cloaky stuff, and then they're gonna come out and they're gonna eat your face off at some point. Well, that's kind of the Darla Cabal. Now, having said that, I said before the break that I was a little bit concerned about their starting traits, and I have played the Darlaks quite a bit since the update came out, which means that I've had, 5 or 6 hours to play them. That would be kind of the extent of it, if that. But based on that, what I can tell you is that they start off kind of slow, and there are ways to, help push them forward in terms of research if you steal techs and what have you. But it can be difficult because you can only conduct espionage on planets that you can see, and that sometimes, particularly in the early game, can be challenging if your opponents close off their systems quickly enough. That means scouting becomes very, very important to the Darlaks, not only at the beginning of the game, but throughout the game, so bear that in mind. Now, in terms of their starting traits, they have a -25% to their assimilation power, so if they take over a colony, presumably it's going to take longer to get those folks to sort of come into the fold, and that's fine, that's reasonable enough in terms of a balance piece. And then the rest of their traits, as you would think, are related to the improvement of sort of the espionage scheme, right? So you've got a plus 10% to security, which is the defensive stat used in the new espionage system. And then you have your mission duration reduced by 10%. So on longer missions, like for instance, let's say you want to steal a technology, that's like 13 turns. So that would save you like a turn. And there are other techs that you can research that will also reduce mission time, but it's not overwhelming. I don't think that any of these traits, at least on what I have played so far with the Darla Cabal, and let me be clear, that's somewhat limited, but I felt like it was definitely a struggle in the early game to take advantage of this. You have to research up to a point, and we'll get into that when we look at the espionage system in more detail in just a moment, but they start slow. And you really do have to sort of stay to the play style of, I'm going to lie in wait, get the perfect opportunity when I have a clear advantage, and then strike your enemies. Now, if that sounds like a fun way to play, then even with the way the traits are currently laid out, then you can have a lot of fun with the Darla Cabal. And I plan to play them because I like playing as a kind of a sneaky scumbag. So we'll see how well I do or not, because I'm still going to continue to play on very hard. But it should prove interesting. Again, I do like the sort of the look and feel of the Darla Cabal. I think they did a great job with them. They have sort of a lot of personality, and they just look very cool. So the Darlocks also get starting tech government. That's nice because the government support building now adds +5 to security. So that kind of, it makes sense that fits in well with the Darlocks, an additional espionage related potential bonus early in the game. Now, the last piece that I'll talk about with them before we move on, ship improvement stealth. Now, I don't really understand, and I'm hoping that I'll get a greater understanding of it as I continue to play them, but I would scout around, and I mean, it didn't seem like they were very stealthy. I mean, maybe the scouts aren't because they're civilian ships, and this only applies to military vessels. I'm not sure. If you know or have some thoughts on, how well the stealth works. I know it's not supposed to make them completely invisible, but I thought it was supposed to have some impact in the single player game, but it doesn't seem to. Perhaps this is a bigger issue if you're playing in multiplayer, that it would give you a greater advantage. You're a system or so away with your fleet ready to pounce on an opponent. My guess is that is the case, but I was a little bit disappointed by the way that the stealth was implemented, at least the little bit that I got to play them in this single player game. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on stealth as it's currently implemented. I'm curious to see what other people's experience has been with it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on then, since it's definitely related to this, to the espionage system. So in order to get started with espionage in your game, there's going to be a couple things are going to have to happen. First, you're going to have updated to, obviously, the Phase 3 version of the game. Now, initially the devs had indicated that previous save games would be compatible, but they're not. So actually what you would have to do, if you're not interested in playing with espionage right now and you want to continue an old save, you would go and load under the beta tab in Steam. You would load up the old version or the previous version of the game and continue your Let's Plays that way. If you want espionage in your game, you'll have to play on the most recent version from 4.22. So once that is updated and you have it, you'll then have to do the research to unlock the Spy Center. You will then have to build the Spy Center. Now it is Empire unique, so kind of be a little bit mindful where you want to place it, and not necessarily in your capital if your capital, is going to be on what would be considered the forward edge of your empire, which is a little bit hard to judge in the early game, but I would suggest that you at least think about it a bit, just in case you lose a world, you don't want to lose your Spy Center. All right, so once that's built, you can send off your spies, and the way you control them is by selecting the the eye icon from the main screen. You can send them on offensive missions, obviously, but you can also keep them close to home and assign them to counter-espionage duty on any colony that you care to. Now, when I've assigned spies to counter intelligence operations, I haven't seen an actual increase in the security rating of said colony. Now, it might be doing something behind the scenes. I don't know, since this is brand new to me. Only time will tell whether or not that's actually working as intended or not. But the offensive missions into other empires does seem to be working. So you send them off, and they will have to conduct sort of a baseline mission, like, collect initial intelligence or what have you. And then you'll go up to another tier and you'll have some more choices. And then once that's completed, if it's completed successfully, you'll go up to the third tier. Like, as an example, I had the option of either hacking a colony or trying to steal some technology. If I hacked the colony, they wouldn't be able to do any research there for like 10 turns. If I successfully stole from them, then I would get some kind of random technology. Now, ultimately, that is what I got. The weird thing about it, though, is that I already possessed the tech. It was Class 1 shields in this case, which I guess makes sense if you're just randomly trying to steal something from an enemy, whether you have it or not. I guess you could still get the same tech, but it would be nice if it was more targeted. Like, if you already had the tech, then the option to steal from them, maybe you try once and it basically tells you, they don't have anything of interest at this time. I did do a subsequent attempt, and I did get a message like that, but it would have been nice if I had just gotten it on the first try instead of sort of a duplicative thing where I got Class 1 shields and already had it. Now, Espionage as a whole is pretty cool, but I think that there's improvements that can still be made. In particular, the interface is a little bit clunky, and what I would say is sort of a tip is that just treat your spies almost like your fleet. Treat them like ships. So when you click on the espionage panel, you get the interface at the bottom. If you want to move someone around, select from the menu who you want to move, and then right-click on the world you want to send them to, just like if it was a ship. If you keep that kind of mindset, I feel like the interface is a little easier to use. But I don't know. For some reason, to me, it felt a little bit clunky. Now, this is just one guy's opinion, but I think they could use another kind of improvement pass on the UI. Now, as to the usefulness of spying in general, well, this is where I kind of go a little bit meh. And what do I mean by meh? Well, one would think that this would be a really good opening strat, right? You could spy, steal, disrupt other empires, create all kinds of havoc, and then through the course of the game, it should scale well. But in my limited playtime, and I did it as the Darla Cabal, the system just wasn't, it just wasn't as helpful as I thought it would be. And let me give you an example. So here I am playing as the Darla Cabal, and I don't know. I set it on a small galaxy against 3 AI players on very difficult. And maybe that's why this wasn't as good as maybe it could be. Because, that's as tough a setup as you can get. Small galaxy against 3 AI players on very difficult means that you're going to have contact within a couple of turns, and things typically don't go the way you want them to in terms of relations with the other, the empires. But I was super aggressive. Okay, I was super aggressive on scouting out. And I didn't even know when I was doing that. That's just sort of my normal bit, but I didn't know how important that was going to be in terms of spying. And within a very short order, I'm talking within, say, the first 30, 35 turns, I was faced with a situation where I had built my spy center, I had done the research I needed to do, I had spies ready to go, and I could only really spy on relatively outlying colonies, and in particular, I had the Thesilicates right next to me, their homeworld, and I couldn't even see their homeworld because they had already built, infrastructure, military outposts, and had fleets sitting there, and I couldn't get to it. So if you can't see the colony, you can't send a spy there. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I mean, I'm supposed to have stealth ships. I should be able to approach and get this. And then I even got the tech upgrade where I could see all the planets in the system, and I still couldn't see it. So I'm in this situation where, in order to potentially use some type of espionage on my enemy, I would have had to first go to war with them. It seemed kind of pointless to me. So I don't know if it was just because of this unique situation and how I set the game up, or if other, if other people are having the same kind of, experience. But that was one issue. The other was that it was a big investment early game. You know, as an example, I could have had another colony ship or two with the resources that I spent, you know, building the spy center and time I spent doing research. I could have gotten something else that maybe was to help with my industry or help with my growth. And I just went right past it. I forego doing that in order to get what I thought was going to be a really good, beginning game asset in terms of being able to spy. And it quite frankly wasn't. So I guess my bottom line here is I think that the new espionage system is extremely cool. And with certain mission types, it's potentially very powerful, as the game goes on. But it really doesn't feel balanced for the early game. And frankly, is just a drain on your empire early on. Now that means that with the Darlocks in particular, I don't know that they're as strong as they could be. So just food for thought. All right, well, let's move on. So the next topic I'm going to touch on is the addition of what's called minor civilizations or minor races. Now this harkens back to Master of Orion II, when you could actually find colonies that had natives on them, and if you settled it, then you would get that population, and they were usually dedicated to a single task like farming or what have you. But I think in some part that was inspiration for this system, and then games like Endless Legend, or even the city-states in Civ 5, I think, had some kind of influence on the design and implementation of these minor races. So what happens is you come in contact with a minor civilization, and you'll have a sort of a default diplomatic status with them, and by either giving them money or by doing quests for them, you can improve said status and eventually become allied with the minor civilization. Now, I have not played through this to its conclusion, so it lists benefits of them being hostile against anyone that's hostile towards you, that they will help you with various, in-game victory, like they'll vote for you and they have a certain number of points. They can vote for you for the Galactic Council seat, that they'll help you get an economic victory, so on and so forth. So there are some tangible benefits. Now, is it worth the investment of time to do the various quests, or to give them the gifts that they ask for? Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's tech and what have you. I'm not sure if it is worth it right now. I have not played through, again, with a minor race to its conclusion where I'm allied with them and what have you, all the way to the end game, to know if it's worthwhile or not. Based on reading, though, people have said that, they'll spend the time, money, and energy to get allied with a minor civilization, and then like 2 turns later or 5 turns later, they're upset and they like break off the alliance or whatever, and any benefits they were given. So it might just be that this system, remember, this is brand new, just introduced in phase 3 of development. So it might not quite be done, right? It's sort of still in the oven. So I just wanted to give you some general information. It was something I thought that was significant that they put into the game. I just don't think it's quite ready for prime time yet. But let me know what your experiences are dealing with the minor races. And more specifically, I'd really be interested to know if you feel like the investment over the span of a game with the minor civilizations, if it's worth it. Like if the time, money, effort, what have you, is it worth it into the end game? Did it really make any real difference for you? Or if it was just sort of fun to have it. I'm kind of interested to see what people think. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I just wanted to show you some little things as we go along. So one of the things that I noticed was new indicators on the tech tree, sort of highlighting whether or not a project is either an economic project that your advisor is saying you should build, or your military advisor or what have you. Useful, I think, for players new to the game. They've also redone and improved the Galactic News Network videos, and they've added a bunch of them. So they're actually kind of funny, the way the robots joke around and stuff now. So I thought I would just include that in this.
Galactic News Network.
Galactic neighbors should take heed, as the Darla Cabal has taken over another planet.
It's a race to the top for sentient beings across the galaxy.
Long-range scanners have detected a gigantic lurking in a previously unexplored sector of space.
So now we have 5 different ways to win the game. Excellence, Conquest, Technological, Diplomatic, and the new Economic Victory. So it says that the requirements are that you have at least one planetary stock exchange, you've reached 50% of the galactic GDP, and then purchase 50% of the outstanding Galactic Monetary Fund shares for at least 10 turns. So, okay. So to me though, and this has kind of been my issue with some of these different victory conditions, is that by the point that you're in the position to be able to do this, and I guess you could really build your systems very lean in terms of their structures, with the exception of sort of money producers, and then do trade goods. But set that strat aside if you're going for economic victory, because you could do that. But by the time you could get an economic victory, in other words, by the time that you could get 50% of sort of the global monetary share, at that point you've got the game beat on excellence victory, or most likely even conquest victory. I mean, because if you're generating that much money, you pretty much have control of the galactic map, or so I would think. So while I like having the economic victory here, I think when I'm playing, if I really want to go for an economic victory, I will likely disable like excellence victory, probably. Maybe even conquest, to sort of force it to be a race to who could win monetarily. I don't know, I'll have to play around with it, but I do think it's cool that they added it, and I like the fact that we now have 5 different ways, in theory, to win the game. So another really large change in the Phase 3 update has been the addition of a brand new ship designer. So as you can see in the video here in the background, it's been redone from the ground up. So on the right hand side, you've got all of the various ship stats, which also includes a new change. Instead of having a military power rating, every ship now has an attack rating and a defense rating, making it much more clean, especially on the galaxy map, to kind of know, size up roughly, how the battles are going to go. On the left hand side here, you can see that all of your various modules are available, and you can grab things and remove them from the ship or put them on the ship very easily. You can also pull down that bar that says all, and you can select, say, armor or shields or what have you, to let you know exactly what you have available by class. They've made it just a lot cleaner. I've played around with it quite a bit, and it's significantly easier. Now, tied in with this, and I'm going to talk about it in tandem, is the new miniaturization technology. So we'll use missiles as an example, because it's a tactic that I really like to use, and I've spoke about it a lot, and it just wasn't implemented yet in this version of Master of Orion, but it would appear now it is, which is you can continue to research technology to make your weapons smaller and more efficient. So like for instance, in the early game, one of the things I like to do is take like a destroyer and pack it full of missiles, and then with this miniaturization tech, I can pack, say, a whole lot of nuclear missiles, and then give them additional bonuses. So once you have unlocked some of the miniaturization tech and combined it with the modification tech, which is now also in the game, then you have a situation where you can, potentially have like these, what would be considered weak nuclear missiles, but now they're modified. So they're faster, and they've got warheads that do more damage and what have you. So you can take aging tech and continue to utilize it. And it becomes a cheap and efficient way, especially in the early game, to build like powerful little missile boats. But I love the fact that this stuff is sort of creeping into the game, and just in general, the tech tree has been expanded. Just as an FYI, there's a lot more choices that you have to make as you go on, and now there's also tech levels where you will get a tech guaranteed and then have to make a choice between 2 others. So that was a welcome change, and I hope they continue to tweak the tech tree. But the new ship designer, thumbs up. The fact that you now have the additional technology and modification tech opened up, that's great too. It's going to make both the strategic and the tactical elements of the game, I think, much more interesting. All right, so let's move on. All right, folks, last but certainly not least are the Phase 3 balance pass changes. They include an increase of 4 population by planet size, which is pretty significant. a rebalance of the biomes, specifically food and having more useful cells and changes to diminishing returns. Same thing with the rebalance of mineral richness. Terraforming's more costly now, so if you have a world that starts off, really at the, poor end of the spectrum, toxic and then barren or what have you, and you continue to terraform it, with every terraform attempt, it's going to become more expensive. It's going to take longer to complete that terraforming project. That harkens back to actually how it worked in Master of Orion II, which I think makes perfect sense. It means that if you have, a system that has a lot of okay-ish worlds and once terraformed are going to be great, then you actually have to pay that sort of entry fee, right? You've got to make that investment, which I think is a good change. They also changed the placement of food technology and spread it out across the tech tree. That means that there's actually going to be a reason to continue to research food-related techs as you get into the later part of the game. Typically, by that point, you don't really care, but it looks like they're trying to make some compelling reasons for you to care. They've rebalanced the galaxy ages, but there really wasn't any detail that I can find, so I'm just going to have to experiment with that. I'm assuming that means that, there's going to be significantly more organic, good biomes with maybe poor planets, and or on the other side, more rich mineral but poor biomes, depending on the galaxy age. Because right now, when you make a choice between the galaxy ages, there's not a whole lot of difference to the galaxy, and my guess is they made that more apparent. Uber planets, I had mentioned before in the earlier in the video that they made some changes. They're going to be kind of closer in line to a Terran biome. Now I agree that they were overpowered, but if they're just going to be like a Terran biome, then what's the point of having them? So I'm going to experiment some more and see exactly how close to Terran they are, because the biggest advantage of, say, a cavernous world or an infernal world and so on is the ability to sort of purge away pollution. And if it's like a Terran world, then why wouldn't you just go ahead and have a Terran world, right? They also increased colony ship cost, the construction time. They said to improve pacing, which was a little vague, I guess, to make the early and mid game longer. I guess that was the objective, but again, I'll have to experiment with that. I did notice when I started playing the Darla, it was taking me quite a bit of time to crank out that second colony ship, so clearly that was part of the balance pass change. Now, as far as continuing coverage for Master of Orion, I will have new Let's Plays for both the Darla and the Silicoid coming out very shortly, perhaps even the same day that you see this video, so I hope that you join me for that. If you did get any useful information from this video, if you enjoyed it, please consider hitting that thumbs up. I put a significant amount of time investment into this particular one, so I'd appreciate that if you wouldn't mind. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I am Mal, and I will see you later.